Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the News Desk with me, Chris Stafford, alongside Nancy Gillen in London. This is Season 4, Episode 40. And Nancy was off last week with a little bit of sickness. You're feeling better now. You're almost there, and hopefully, barring coughing fits, we'll get through the show this week. But just to tell everybody, that's why we did not record last week, because Nancy was off sick. I think, didn't you say you had a fever, Nancy?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a flu, so just kind of, feverish, very tired and coughing away. But yeah, it kind of came out of the blue, out of nowhere. And then, I had to spend 2 or 3 days in bed. But yeah, feeling a lot better now and very nearly at the end of it. So it's just going around at the moment. I think people, it's that time of year and people's immune systems aren't 100% after the pandemic. So yeah, people getting struck down by the flu, and unfortunately I was one.
Yeah, well, you have to be careful attending these football games, and sitting in the bleachers this time of year. It's a place where the people catch colds.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it was actually, I was at the Claressa Shields Savannah Marshall boxing match the day before I got ill, so I probably made it worse by going to that, but it was worth it.
Yeah, well, we want to hear about that. Because that was a game that had to be rescheduled, a match rather that had to be rescheduled. We're also going to be talking about tennis this week and football, of course, with the playoffs, particularly over here in the US. And then the World Cup draw was announced as well last week. And plus we've got the Rugby World Cup and the Rugby League World Cup, and an update on the start of the Skiing World Cup. And there's also some ice skating news as well that Nancy's got at the end of the show. But I wanted to start, Nancy, because just this morning, as we're recording this on Tuesday, October 25th, the news broke this morning that the WNBA star Brittney Griner, who we know has been detained in a Russian jail now since February, she's now served 8 months already, she lost her appeal, and that was a hope, of course, for getting a reduction in her sentence of 9 years. But that really hit me hard, Nancy, when I heard that this morning.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a really kind of shocking news, and I think people had been holding out hope that, maybe not her whole sentence would have been repealed, but she would have got a bit of leeway, because 9 years is a very, very long sentence to be serving in a prison completely so far away from home. So yeah, I think it was definitely a bit of a blow to everyone that's kind of been hoping that Brittney Griner is released relatively soon. To see that sentence upheld, and you hope now is kind of with that legal route out the way. I think the next option is for the US government to negotiate a prisoner swap or a deal for her to be released from prison. So you hope that now kind of they've exhausted the court proceedings, that maybe they can kind of crack on now with the prisoner swap and hopefully get her home as soon as possible. But yeah, it was a shocking day, I think, for anyone that's been following that case.
It certainly is, but I believe there's two possibilities that her lawyers can take to an appellate court and ultimately to the Supreme Court, and they haven't made it clear whether they will take that route. And you have to wonder if they're losing faith in the Russian judicial system anyway, and if now is the after the appeal decision is the turning point where the US government and the Russian government can now say, okay, you've lost your appeal, and really negotiate that prisoner swap or some kind of deal to release her. And I also should mention Paul Whelan, who is another US citizen who's been detained for a number of years now, and he apparently is part of that negotiation, the prisoner swap, the deal that has been talked about. So yeah, but it would be nice to think both of them could be released fairly soon. But yeah, pretty shocking news that she lost that appeal for a reduction in her sentence. So we'll keep you posted here and give you our thoughts if there's any update on that. So Nancy, I want to go to the fight that you attended, which had been rescheduled, the Claressa Shields and Savannah Marshall fight, and you attended that, and it actually broke records, didn't it? As well as Claressa Shields herself breaking records by beating Savannah, but the boxing match itself made history, didn't it?
Yeah, so more than 2 million people tuned into that women's boxing match, which it was actually the biggest audience for a live women's sports events on Sky Sports, which is pretty significant based on the fact that Sky do show a lot of women's sport, and they have the Women's Super League, they've got W Series, so the fact that this boxing match was the most watched is pretty significant. And it was the first ever all-female boxing event, so it kind of had that billing to live up to that historic event. So it was people watching on TV with Sky, but also on their online live streams as well. I think they have one on YouTube and TikTok, so people watched on there, and then more than 6 million people viewed video clips from the fight across Sky Sports digital and social platforms as well. So it went, right across different social media platforms. And then as well, the O2 Arena itself, so in person, was sold out. So I think there were about 20,000 people there. And I was there myself, and the atmosphere was absolutely incredible. It was really, really, it was really good. I think the matches before the main event, sometimes a bit quieter, but as it got closer and closer to Shields Marshall, the atmosphere was electric. I think the fact that there was kind of a home boxer in Savannah Marshall really helped. And the fight itself was incredible. That was my first professional boxing fight that I've seen up close. I used to do inside the games of my old job. I went to the amateur World Boxing Championships, but it wasn't on the scale of this. This was so much bigger and faster, and that the fight itself was. They were both absolutely going for it. There was no holding back whatsoever. So it definitely lived up to expectation, and hopefully kind of pleased everyone that tuned in to watch it. And like you said, Claressa Shields won on a unanimous decision. She became the unified middleweight champion. And in my opinion, it was well deserved. I think she was just that bit better than Savannah Marshall. But overall, it was a really historic night for women's sport.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it. And for those who are not familiar with that venue, the O2 Stadium is a large stadium in the east of London, isn't it? Yeah,
it is. And it is big. It is it's normally used for things like music concerts and stuff, as opposed to sporting events. So it's always really impressive when they kind of sell it out for a sporting event.
Yeah, and for a women's sports event too. That it was marked for that. That's amazing. All right, let's move on to some tennis news now, because we've got some controversy and we've got some records being broken. Should we start with Iga Swiatek, who collected her 8th title of the year when she won in San Diego recently? Nancy, how about that? I know you like her.
Yeah, she's just continuing her really impressive form this season. So, beat Donna Vekic at the San Diego Open. It was a good comeback from the Ostrava Open the week previously, when she'd suffered her first defeat in 11 finals, just to show how well Swiatek performs at the very top level. So she'd lost Ostrava Open, but then came back the next week to win San Diego Open. Her 8th title of 2022, which has also included US Open and French Open titles. Her 64th win of 2022, and I know that's right up there with the record amount of single season victories. She's kind of firmly solidified her place as well, number one at the top of the rankings. So she will finish her season at the WTA finals in Fort Worth, which gets underway, I believe, next Monday on October 31st.
Yeah. On Halloween it starts right through till November 7th. That's in Texas, for anyone who's not familiar with Fort Worth.
Yeah, and we've got our 8 players qualified for that tournament in total as well. So it always takes a bit of time to find out the top 8 players from the season, but all 8 have now qualified, so it should be a really exciting tournament.
Yeah, a great way to end the season. I know that the players look forward to that too. That's their favourite finale for the year. Now, on the other end of the scale, we've got some surprising news about Simona Halep, who was tested positive to drugs. Now, I know she's going to appeal, but that took everybody by surprise, including her.
Yeah, I think really surprising, and I think it's the first major kind of really high-profile doping case in tennis since Maria Sharapova in 2016. So that's kind of 6 years ago now. But last week, Halep announced that she had returned a positive sample during the US Open back in August. But as with these things, there's always a bit of a delay. So she was told about it in October. But it was a substance that is banned on WADA's list of prohibited substances. It's called roxadustat, and it's normally used for people with anemia. It's kind of about red blood cell production, which you can understand why that is on WADA's prohibited substance list. So, Halep kind of responded to it immediately, releasing a statement on Twitter, saying that she's innocent, essentially, that she will fight until the end to prove that I never knowingly took any prohibited substance, and that she has faith that sooner or later the truth will come out. I think since she said this as well, she has had a lot of support from people within the community. So her old coach, Darren Cahill, I think has said that he would never think that she would take a prohibited substance, and her current coach as well, Patrick Muratoglu, has also defended her as well. So at the moment she's been provisionally suspended. So of course there's all the paths to appeal and things like that, but it sounds like she's going to kind of go out really fighting that. You would have to think she's kind of 31, and I don't know how long the final suspension will be if she doesn't get it fully overturned, but it could potentially spell the end of her career. So it is quite a significant moment, I think, in her, well, in just the whole of tennis, really, because we haven't had a case like this in quite a while. No, not since Sharapova, probably. Yeah. So 6 years, really. Yeah. Some more tennis news before we sign up. I wanted, on this topic, I wanted to give a mention to Coco Gauff. She's up to a new career high of number 7 on the WTA rankings. Not bad for an 18-year-old. Yeah, really impressive. She's been really stepped up a gear, I think, this year, and reached a French Open final, which is good to see. And she's 18 years old, such a talent. So very happy to see her doing well. Well, this year she's reached the quarterfinals or better of 6 of her last 8 tournaments. So she's obviously picking up some form there. And exciting to look forward to next year with her. And just for something completely new and different, we're going to talk about football now. We always have football. Tis the season. Tis the season over there for you. We are coming to the end of our season here, which we have the full season. And we're into the playoffs now of the NWSL. And I'm sure you followed the highlights, at least, Nancy, from afar. There was a little bit of a surprise here, just to replay how they got here. The quarterfinals saw Kansas City Current beat Houston Dash 2-1, and San Diego beat the Chicago Red Stars also 2-1. And then we moved on to the semifinals with OL Reign and Kansas City Current and Portland Thorns playing San Diego. OL Reign were actually ranked number 1, Portland number 2, and San Diego 3, Kansas City 5. Well, this past weekend, Nancy, we had 2 fantastic games, and Kansas City Current, they actually beat OL Reign, bit of a surprise, but 2-0. And that was thanks to Alex Leora and Kristen Hamilton.
And they also had a fantastic crowd, Nancy. The 21,000 plus attended that game. And when Portland Thorns in the other semifinals, they played San Diego and beat them 2-1 thanks to Rocky Rodriguez and Crystal Dunn, who scored in the 93rd minute, which we'll talk about, and Taylor Kornecki, she scored for San Diego. But again, there was a fantastic crowd, 22,000 plus at Providence Park in Portland, saw that. That was the largest attendance count in NWSA playoff, the second largest rather. If you remember, San Diego had a record crowd the previous week of 26,000 plus. So pretty impressive attendance for these playoffs. And I also should mention that Casey Stoney, I know is one of your favorite coaches. She's the coach of San Diego, and Rhian Wilkinson, who's the coach for Portland. They were the first. That was the first time there were two female head coaches went head to head in a playoff game. First time in NWSL history. So a lot of milestones here, Nancy, with those kind of crowds, consistently good crowds.
Yeah, really, I think really impressive to see that. And like you said, it is definitely about the consistency, because it's great to have a match where you break the record, but then you want the same amount of people to be coming out every week, really. And yeah, the playoffs is such a big occasion that it's great to see players come out and lend to a really good atmosphere as well, because yeah, the highlights that I did see from the matches, the atmosphere looked amazing. So that's always a massive positive.
It is, isn't it? I mean, tremendous atmosphere with all the smoke effects and you know, I was going to say brass bands, but not the drum bands that they have in the crowd, really create a fantastic atmosphere. And it's so good to see. There seems to be, Nancy, something of a momentum in women's football now after the Euros, and with our expansion teams generating such good attendance over here too, that I think, you know, two of the leading countries in the world of women's football now are really pushing the sport forward, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think it is kind of the momentum. And I think after the 2019 World Cup, it was close to getting there. But then we had the pandemic and everything stopping, and definitely lost a bit of momentum. So it's great to see it pick up back again. And with the World Cup next year as well, there's, you know, you can see it just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's very satisfying, I think, to see when you've been banging the drum for a while. It's great to see other people getting involved too.
Yeah, literally banging that drum in the stands. All right, just a reminder then that Kansas City will go ahead and play Portland Thorns in the final on October 29th. And that takes place in Washington, D.C. at Audi Field. So anybody near Washington, D.C., get along to Audi Field. It's one heck of a stadium. The stands are too high for me. I can't go up in the gods. I suffer from a fear of heights, a real fear of heights. So, yeah, unfortunately not. But we'll be watching that on TV. I think it's on CBS. But that's on October 29th, this coming weekend. Well, the bigger picture, Nancy, we're talking about world football, and all eyes will be on New Zealand and Australia next year for the 2023 World Cup. And that draw was announced and the groups decided last week whilst you were sick. And I'm sure we're watching it, though, even though you were sick in your bed. I bet you were looking forward to that, to see who is going to show up for those group stages. And why don't we start with your group, England, Group D?
Yeah, so I think quite a relatively tricky group. I think the thing about the World Cup is there are so many good teams involved. So, yeah, I think the first draw was China, which is always a bit of an unknown. I think we don't often play them too much. So, yeah, I think slightly unknown then. And then we get a team from the playoff tournament, which still is ongoing. I think that takes place sometime next year. But I think just looking at the teams that are in that tournament, I think Chile looks quite likely. And then Denmark as well, who are maybe a bit more familiar with. They've got players like Pernille Harder, who plays for Chelsea and are quite they're a decent team. They have been a bit of a force in women's football, but I think, so that group seems to be a bit of a mixed bag, really.
So we've got 8 groups, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and in Group E is the USA. Now, they've got Vietnam, Netherlands, and then the Group A playoff winner. What do you make of that grouping, Nancy?
I think, again, that's that United States-Netherlands match is always a tough one, and it's seems to be quite common, the 2019 Women's World Cup final. So interesting to have the two teams meet in the group stage instead of at the end again. Vietnam, I think, probably should be pretty straightforward for the US. And then, again, it's a bit of mystery there. We're waiting to see who the playoff Group A winner will be.
Yeah. All right. So those 8 groups have all been decided, and we'll have a lot more to talk about, I'm sure, especially as we turn into 2023. But for now, we will post those draw results on our website at wisports.com in the show notes accompanying this episode, so you can see who is playing who. Are you planning to go down under for that, Nancy?
I'm hoping to. I think I need to put a bit of a plan together, speak to work about it, and just kind of assess my options. But I'm very, very much hoping to. I want to. So, I'll just try and make it happen, basically. Yeah. Yeah,
I think you should. Since you like to watch football from time to time, why not go and watch the World Cup and go down? It'd be your chance to go down under as well. I don't think you've been down under.
Exactly. No, I've never been to Australia. It's one country that I've never been to that I would absolutely love to go to. So it kind of combines football and going to a new country. So it's definitely want to. Yeah, exactly. Definitely want to be there.
Well, speaking of down under, right now taking place in New Zealand is the Rugby World Cup, which started on October the 8th, runs right through to November 22nd. So it's quite the party down there in New Zealand. And we know how the New Zealanders love their rugby. So what's the latest from down there beyond the pool stages of the tournament, Nancy?
Yeah, so we've had every team has played 3 matches in the pool stages at the moment. It's been particularly good for hosts New Zealand. They've won all 3 of their matches. I think, as expected, as kind of one of the best teams in the world. And similarly, England as well have got off to a really good start, winning all 3 of their matches as well. They had a potential banana skin against France. It was quite a tough match there, but England won 13-7. So just about came out on top there. And then in Pool B, Canada as well have impressed by winning all of their matches. So kind of the 3 teams to watch at the moment are Canada, New Zealand and England. So there's one more set of games to be played, which will be in the pool stages, which will be I think we move on to the quarterfinals now, actually, already.
I think we do.
Yeah, of course, 3 matches each. There's 4 teams in each. That's my sleepy brain not doing maths very well. So we've this weekend we go onto the quarterfinals. So the matchups are France, Italy, New Zealand, Wales, England, Australia, which should be a really good one. Canada, USA as well, should be great. I think Canada and the USA have already played in the pool stages. So
yes,
Canada won that 29-14. So they might have a bit of a psychological edge there, but some really good matchups there. So very exciting.
And that's this weekend. So stay tuned. That should be super, super exciting to see how that plays out. Some really, really strong teams there, as you say, especially with New Zealand. Australia have done well, but Canada too. And I know England were favourites going into that. So let's see. As 2 Brits here, we're keeping our fingers crossed.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Meanwhile, in the other format, in the Rugby League World Cup, that's been playing out. What do you know about that? Did you follow that? Because they called it World Cup, Rugby League World Cup from 2021, didn't they? They had to reschedule that.
Yeah, so that was a bit of a victim of the pandemic. It was rescheduled from last October, November to this period of the year. But that's so it's quite interesting because basically 3 Rugby League World Cups in one. The men, the women's, and the wheelchairs are all taking place at the same time across England. But the women's hasn't quite got underway yet. So the men has started, but the women are starting next week. I think it's the 1st of November, so next Tuesday. So preparations kind of ramping up for that. At the moment,
England are going to play Brazil, aren't they? In that first round in Leeds, your university town.
Yes, that is my university town. Yeah, it's definitely the north of England is the hotbed for rugby league. So I think that's at the Headingley Stadium where Leeds Rhinos. I've watched a few Leeds Rhinos games there, but England versus Brazil is the first match on November the 1st. I think it's. Like I said, because it is such a sport that's very popular in one region of the country, I'm based in the south. I'm very interested to see kind of the cut through into other areas of the country. But I'll definitely try and watch a few matches if I can.
Yeah, it would be fun to see. I mean, that's great that they've put all 3 together, isn't it? I mean, men's and women's in the wheelchair. It strings it out longer, but it gives the women and the wheelchair teams the exposure, alongside the men's team. So it probably should be a win-win for everybody, I would think. Is it on TV much?
Yeah, it is on TV. It's on the BBC, so that is good. I think it definitely does create a sense of occasion, and you've got so many matches happening. But again, it's kind of it's strange. I think having a sport which only is really popular in the north, and then I think with women's rugby, you've got the Rugby Union World Cup happening as well. So maybe that clash has been a bit of maybe taken away slightly from the Rugby League World Cup. I'm not sure. But it'd be interesting to see when the women's starts, how many people kind of get behind it and watch it.
Well, if you're a rugby fan, there's certainly plenty going on for you in your sport right now, whether it's the league or playing rugby. And what slipped down the running order for me, Nancy, and you had sent this story to me, which we should add to our tennis news about the American player Jessica Pegula.
Oh, yes, yeah. Really good. Been a great week for her. She is one of the 8 who was qualified for the WTA finals, which we were talking about earlier. And she also won the Guadalajara Open, which is that was her first WTA 1000 title. And she is currently, I think she's now risen to 3rd in the world, which is really high and kind of rewarded, I think, consistency throughout the season. She hasn't necessarily kind of been winning loads or been, getting really, really far in every single Grand Slam. But I think just consistently she's been doing pretty well. So, congrats to her, and it'd be interesting to see how she does at the WTA finals, given she is in really good form at the moment.
She is, and we should mention that she beat Maria Sakkari in the finals in Guadalajara. As well as Stan Stevens and also Elena Rybakina. So, that's not too shabby for her, as you say. She definitely deserved a shout out. And sorry we missed her in the tennis spot there, but we had to include her in this week's news. 2 more stories before we leave the room this week on the show. That one of which, of course, is skiing. If anybody follows the season of skiing, they'll know that it's the start of the season has seriously stalled because Solden, which is the traditional start to the season, a Grand Slam in Austria, usually kicks off in October last week, and that had to be called off there because of the weather. It was too warm. And then today, Tuesday, October 25th, we just heard that after today's snow control in Switzerland, in Zermatt, Cervinia, the 2 women's downhill races that were scheduled for the November 5th and 6th have both been cancelled due to the warm weather conditions. So an unusually warm autumn season in Europe, you said, Nancy, and these are 2 victims of global warming. and the climate change, and really is impacting the start of the season, because I know the first one, the giant slalom in Solden, that's not going to be rescheduled. So we have to wait to see if the 2 downhills in Zermatt, Cervinia will be rescheduled. But yeah, victims of the weather conditions, Nancy, of warm weather.
Yeah, it's I'm not sure when the weather necessarily is going to change, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are, future kind of incidents like that, because it is very unnaturally warm in Europe at the moment. Yeah.
Well, speaking of winter sport, we do have one more item of news, and that concerns the Russian skater Valieva, who you will remember was banned. She tested positive last year at the Beijing Olympics, but then she did skate. But Nancy, you've got an update which really adds to the debacle of this case.
Yeah, so I think. This happened last year, and kind of everyone's been waiting for an update on it. But the Russian Anti-Doping Agency has decided to treat the case as confidential. So they haven't really, there's not too much transparency about the case. RUSADA said that they wouldn't publish the results of its investigation because of Valieva's status as a protected person due to her age. So this was definitely an issue when the case was ongoing last year. It was it earlier this year? Actually, sorry, I've literally my time is my time has gone wrong. It was literally February, wasn't it? It was this year. Yeah, I can't believe we've had an Olympics this year. Earlier this year.
She was banned in December, wasn't she? So she was banned before the Olympics.
Yeah, so she tested positive before the Olympics, and then she appealed the provisional suspension and was allowed to skate. But then this all came out during the games, and she was clearly visibly upset about it. And when she skated in the final, she crashed. Just looked very shaky and finished 4th. So I think there was a big debate about the fact that she was only 15 at the time, and she had kind of had this massive saga go on around her while she was kind of competing in the public eye, and it probably should have never got to the point where this was playing out on like the biggest international sporting stage. So the extent to which RUSADA are actually keeping it confidential because of that, and the extent to which they're keeping it confidential to kind of protect themselves a bit, I don't know. I think that's definitely debatable. But an Americanized dancer, Evan Bates, has criticised the fact that they're keeping the results of the investigation so secret. And he said extremely disappointing to be at this point 8 months later and to still have it so shrouded in secrecy. And I feel like as a baseline, we should hope for transparency, and not only for the public, but especially for the athletes involved. It seems only right. I think it's for the people involved in this saga, because especially, they didn't have the medal ceremony for the team event at the Olympics. So I think Bates was one of those affected by that, where he didn't actually get didn't get the rewards that they probably should have. It just seems like a bit of a mess, really. And it probably is better just for everyone involved if they're transparent about the results and reveal what's actually happening.
And if anybody was watching that the Winter Olympics, they'll know that she was obviously suffering from the pressure, Nancy. She finished 4th, didn't she? She really came undone and fell.
Yeah, she was, I think, kind of set to win gold, and then was not forced to perform, but I suppose kind of was forced to perform to a degree under this, everything going on around her. And yeah, she was kind of emotional and mentally just not prepared, I think, to compete. So it was all a bit of a mess. And yeah, it just seems like they just want to continue to keep it quiet and push down, which I don't think is best for her, really, because I think it's better there's transparency with this case.
Yes, I agree. All right, I'm sure more of that will unfold, especially as the season gets underway on the ice. Well, that about wraps it up for this week, I think, Nancy. I know we missed a week, and so we were trying to play catch-up a little bit here. How's your Arsenal team doing? They're still winning. There's a rumour that they're still winning. Is that true?
Yeah, they are still winning, and winning pretty unbeaten in the Women's Super League. So we got our fourth win of the season against Liverpool at the weekend, 1-2-0. But I think more significant was our first Champions League group game. Last week we beat Lyon 5-1, which was massive, really. I think Lyon, defending champions for ages, has been one of the best women's teams in the world, and definitely granted had a lot of injuries, so they were missing a lot of their big players. But I think 5-1 was a very unexpected result and a really resounding result. So yeah, Arsenal are doing great at the moment. It's a good time to be an Arsenal fan. Yeah,
very good time to be an Arsenal fan, and that was, as you say, resounding win 5-1. Well, what next for them in the Champions League then, Nancy?
So we're playing Zurich at home on Thursday at 8 p.m. So I probably will go along to that match because it is being played at the Emirates, which is just down the road. I haven't really thought about it, to be honest, because I've been recovering from illness, but there's no real reason why I shouldn't go to that. So probably we'll go down to that match against Zurich, which should be good.
And Leah Williamson, who I asked you before earlier this evening, who is obviously the Lionesses captain, she injured her foot, re-injured an ankle injury. This is a recurring injury, Nancy, but she's out clubbing still, so she's probably on the mend. The boot is off. So you mentioned that she's going to miss the internationals next month, playing Japan. And who was the other team you were playing? Norway?
Norway, yeah. So, she'll be missing that, but you'd hope that she won't be back too much longer after that. So it's going quite well. I think we do want Williamson back as quickly as possible because last season we struggled when she got injured. But hopefully it will only be a month or so until she's back on the pitch. Yeah, because she has an important date next year with the World Cup. She does, I want her fit for the World Cup. No more putting her foot in it, metaphorically speaking, and ankle. All right, Nancy. I'm sure you've got plenty of football to watch then as the season unfolds. We've got the playoff final, as I said, at the Audi Field in Washington, D.C. this weekend. Kansas City current playing Portland. So I wouldn't like to say who's going to win this. I'm going to withhold judgment. Where do you think, Nancy, as looking from across the pond, who do you think is going to win this? I'm going to back Kansas, I think, just because it was, we were talking about it. It wasn't necessarily a team that I'd expect to be in that position. So I think, why not? Why can't they go all the way? Yeah, well, it would be huge if they did. But yeah, it'll be an exciting one. I'll be watching that. We'll bringing you our thoughts on that game and, of course, the Champions League game of Arsenal versus Zurich this weekend. So join us next week on the News Desk show. And Nancy's going to tell you, in the meantime, how you can follow her on social media and online. Yep. So I'm on Twitter at Nancy_Gillen. I'm on Instagram at NancyGillen_sport, and then I write for Gimme Sport Women. So our Twitter handle is at Gimme Sport W, and you can just read all my articles on there. Excellent. All right. And we are at WithSports.com and online at WithSports. So until next week, from Nancy Gillen and myself, Chris Stafford, thank you for tuning in. Enjoy your sport.